There is a lot of controversy surrounding this show, most warranted, some just speculation, and nothing that I myself have a solid answer for one way or the other. So I'm going to try and push that aside for now and answer the question of, did the Patrick Star Show start out well? Well, the episode begins by introducing us to Patrick Star and his family in order of dad, who is fishing and catches a toilet, setting a precedent of the kind of humor we're going to get here. Random and absurd. It also retcons Patrick's parents that we already saw in the original SpongeBob series, so to avoid stepping over from one series to the next, I'm going to try and keep the continuity separate as if they both exist within a vacuum in terms of how I rate it. I'll still bring up inconsistencies now and then, but I won't demerit the show for not necessarily being what I think of when I think of Patrick or his family. Headcanon that this is a family of actors or something, I don't care, especially since the writers don't care either. So anyway, moving on. We then get introduced to the mom as Patrick busts out of a drawer for some reason and she catches plates, as food that doesn't belong in a toaster flies out of a toaster. Get it? Because it doesn't belong in a toaster. Do you get it? Then we're introduced to Patrick's also retcon sister. She runs away with smoke to cover her tracks, showing that she's at the very least camera shy, but in case you didn't get that from the visuals alone, Patrick tells you himself. Wonderful. Then we see Grandpap, who is doing donuts in what appears to be the living room. Man's having the time of his life. Lastly, we get shown Patrick's room, completely different than the minimalist style from the original series, with an overabundance of things in an overwhelming amount of places. He also is holding a sea urchin. Given what we see in the background, we can surmise it's probably his pet, even though it's not present next scene when the whole family are together chilling in a coffee mug that poured out from their house, somehow by a hand, as SpongeBob and other characters watched and cheered, even though I'm not sure what his house and the TV beside it have to do with each other, or where the liquid came from, or why SpongeBob and others are just chilling in front of his house to begin with, or why SpongeBob either has hair or a lump on his head, or why there's a cup near the house in the first place since there isn't a road near it, and how they will even get out, or what's stopping them from drowning while they're in there, or what I'm doing even watching this show in the first place, and this is all exaggerated for comedy, but the point remains that for the first 40 seconds of the show, it focused more on throwing things at our screens in hopes that something sticks, instead of actually developing the rules of the show, the physics, the stakes, not even the characters. For 40 seconds, all we got was labels for characters we are supposed to care about in order to make the show worth watching. Mom, dad, sister, grandpap, all names that anyone can apply to their family as well. So what about this family makes me care to see them on screen? As of right now, nothing, because I know as much about them as well as the world itself as I did before they were even introduced. We then see Squidward as a paperboy throw a paper to the Star residence while being chased by a runaway pet. Then Patrick's wall instruments wake up the urchin that gets scared and jumps so high it hits Patrick in the head as he then falls to the ground from the ceiling that he was sleeping on. The crash gave us our first taste of how physics work within the show, which I am happy about since it's important to be defined in order for slapstick humor to actually work. Speaking of humor, we get to know the urchin's name is Ouchie, as Patrick gets himself injured by him multiple times, focusing on the facial injuries in these scenes that I loved in early SpongeBob episodes when done right, but not so much here. The joke's already too played out, with every scene up to this point being, oh no, Ouchie hurt Patrick, now Patrick is hurt, look at hurt Patrick. It wasn't funny the first few seconds and isn't funny now that it's pushed even further. Although humor is subjective, this sets a bad tone for me, since they have hurt the pacing by pushing this one joke too far when it flatlined near the start, which if you thought it was funny near the beginning, then the raised bar every time could have been even more chucklesome for you, but I sure didn't think so. Patrick goes to brush his teeth, then puts a cherry on it and brushes his eyes instead. Oh gee willikers, I didn't expect that. The joke formula of say you're going to do something then do something else isn't subversive anymore, and I don't believe I'd think it was funny as a kid either, it's just pretty lame. He then pulls the cherry out of his nose and feeds it to Ouchie, but then says that that is gross after he was the cause of the situation he's commenting on, characterizing him as not only an idiot for how he's done literally nothing right this entire episode, but actively malicious, as he knew feeding Ouchie his nose cherry was gross, but yet did it anyway. What a scumbag. Then his watch tries to tongue punch him, so he knows it's time for his show to start. He looks for his sister, who we now know is named Squidina, opening a door and it leading to a medieval hallway with a violent knight, then closing said door and saying it's the wrong door, then going to open it again. Get it? Because he's stupid? Oh, but wait, Squidina opens the bottom half of the door and walks through it no problem. So what is the joke here? If he was right all along, then it's not a Patrick stupid joke. How is the same door two different places? Was it a short joke since Squidina had to use the bottom part of the door? Is the door sentient? Where's the humor? Then it's time for Patrick's show to officially begin. His in-show show, not, well, you know what I mean. He sings a song about him being stupid and gluttonous. Not even kidding, that's all it's about, with the only funny bit being, too bad the horrid song ruined that moment for me, given SpongeBob unironically has bangers like Fun, Grill is Not a Home, and Ripped Pants. This was a giant letdown. Squidina, who acts as the director of the Patrick Star Show, asks Patrick what the episode is about, but because he's dumb, in case you haven't got that yet, he says he doesn't know, and says he's gluttonous, in case you haven't got that yet, he says he's hungry. Bravo, the character they reduced down to 2 stereotypes isn't able to carry his own show. Who would have thought? To further exemplify this point, they then cut to a commercial break, relying on Plankton to now help lessen the load. This scene is fine. The cardboard cutouts were kinda funny, but it's not very original and just yet again harms the pacing. Nothing of note had happened so far, 4 minutes in and I wanted to end. Finally though, we arrive at what named the episode, Breakfast Time. Patrick opens the door to the emptiness of space, almost getting dragged in. This weird sentient door having no set limitations could admittedly be funny, but you've already relied on it twice within 4 minutes, causing it to grow stale rather quickly. Patrick takes the sentient door off and shakes it, revealing nothing to be behind it, establishing that the door itself controls where you go, which is kinda cool in concept, but if that's the case, then why not let Patrick use it correctly? Why does it seem to mess up for him specifically, and why does bullying the door somehow rectify that? Why does this show not understand basic joke structure, and how world building would affect that? Patrick then ladles into the dining room from a zipline because haha wacky, before greeting his parents and forgetting who Grandpap is because he's stupid. His parents forget who Grandpap is too. Great, they're also stupid, with Grandpap saying that this happens every single day. They are literally just an extension of Patrick, so we have 3 characters with the same archetype in the cast of main characters. I wonder what clever jokes they can make with stupid, director stupid, and whatever Grandpap's character ends up being. Probably a mix of senile and stupid, but who knows, maybe they'll surprise me, or maybe I'll be the stupid one for hoping they do. Then Squidina is doing directing duty since she's a director, and Patrick gets basic French wrong since, you know, he's not very smart. He doesn't get breakfast though because he's late, and his dumb parents forgot about him, even though they set a plate out for him, so they didn't really forget about him, but they did forget to put food on Patrick's plate, so they carried an empty plate to his seat. But if they didn't know who Grandpap was, then why did he get a plate, let alone food, especially since they did remember Patrick earlier and set Patrick out a plate now? Nothing in the show is even remotely coherent. Kill me. Then Patrick rolls over to the fridge, opening it where we can see it's actually used as a fridge, but a knight charges at him and cuts through the door once closed, but you see fridge items right before the knight. I swear this is a fever dream. He then looks under the table to see another family eating morsels of food, asking if he wants some, then guilting him into saying no. Then they run off and the scene transitions to Patrick calling out for food, finding a random city under the rug, before saying his mom needs to vacuum under there more often before the scene transitions again. The show is bad joke after bad joke with barely anything tying it together, making me wonder why it needs to exist in the first place. Patrick is then trying to mine Grandpap's rock bed for food, causing Grandpap to say kids have it easy these days. Get it because he's old and that's what old people stereotypically say, before we see a flashback of Grandpap in prehistoric times and Plankton yet again making a cameo, since these characters can't hold a scene on their own, as we then yet again see another Squidward cameo right after, proving my point. The entire point of a spin-off that focuses on the family of a main character that we never met before it is for it to, well, focus on that family. This show, however, can't do that because these characters don't differentiate from one another enough to actually make a compelling scene, even during a flashback that could have had anything in it. They could have creatively made new designs for dinosaurs, some unique to this show, but they took the lazy route instead, relying on SpongeBob's main characters to carry the scene, instead of the main characters from this show itself. Once the scene ends, they yet again have a cutaway gag that relies on Squidward's, pardon the pun, star power. There was a cool setup here, a world like Bikini Bottom where dinosaurs roam free. That'd be an interesting premise for a full episode if they leaned into the randomness and lack of limitations set by its more grounded partner that this series stemmed from. Too bad, even though canonically dinosaurs are still alive in the show, it'll probably never be touched on again. Wonderful. Patrick then comes up with the idea to have a cooking segment, which although short, is by far the most creative thing that's came out of the show so far. Finally focusing on the point of the show, as the title of the series implies, Patrick stars very own show, with a gag during the credits actually making me smile. If they lean into this aspect but in more creative ways, then they could actually justify this show's existence instead of it feeling like a gag that could be contained within the original series. Squidina then talks about all the things that happened during Patrick's in-show show that we never got to see, with Patrick commenting on him not remembering it, pointing out what your show could have been in order to actually be entertaining while you do the exact opposite just makes me wish you followed some of the cliches that you're commenting on. If you aren't doing it better, then you just make yourself look worse when the basic ideas are at the end of the day better ones. Patrick then goes back to the kitchen to eat, thinking he missed dinner again, looks under the table at the fish eating more crumbs. The youngest son offers Patrick food, but he declines without the guilt trip needed, which is some character development in some capacity, I guess. Since it's a reused joke though, it isn't any more funny than it was the first time, and trust me when I say that it wasn't funny then either. Then his family shows up, so he didn't miss dinner after all, but his mom made the trasher from his cooking segment and they chow down as a family, which implies that his mom watches his show, which is pretty wholesome at the end of the day. Squidina then says she booked a sponge that blows bubbles, obviously a reference to SpongeBob, but says she did it on her toy phone. More randomness. Was it funny? Are you laughing? I don't hear you laughing. The episode ends with his parents saying he's a little angel and then forgetting who he is because they are dumb, just like him. Brilliant. Normally I'd cover both segments since they aired as one episode, but instead of solving any of the issues the first segment has, it furthers my point by relying on outside characters, having Patrick and SpongeBob go on escapades, and Squidward fight with Patrick's dad over buying his newspapers. It could literally exist with a normal episode of SpongeBob, and I don't want to sit and hate on a segment just for the sake of doing so. With that being said, did the Patrick Star Show start out well? No it didn't. It established 3 of the 5 main characters as stupid, making them all practically the same person. Squidina was nothing more than a director who just so happens to be shy and Patrick's sister, and Grandpap was a stereotype through and through. It relied heavily on references and cameos of the original cast, not able to separate itself in any meaningful way, making the entire idea, the entire need of this spin-off entirely pointless. It barely even touched on the idea of Patrick's show. You know what this show is about in-universe, making the entire thing feel hollow by the end. It confused randomness and bodily pain as humor, making characters do things that harm who those characters are separate to the situation in order to try and make funny moments that then come off as forced, lazy, and uninspired by the end. Nothing made much sense. There was barely even coherency within the episode itself, let alone as a foundation for future episodes. The episode didn't even matter at the end of the day, since he never even resolved the issue himself and just ate during dinner like he would have regardless of every other scene the entire episode. Nothing mattered, and that's the best way to end this video out on, because at the end of the day, none of it made any significant impact whatsoever. I wasn't a fan and probably won't return to it in the future unless it ever actually has a good episode that you think I should check out. Until then though, what do you think I should talk about? Let me know in the comments below. Dislike if you dislike this, and for more news, reviews, and whatever we choose, stay tuned to Nerdsfeed. Have a great day. Thank you.